Thank you for listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, where we discuss all of the news in the world of basketball. My name is Ben Brown. I am in the studio alone today, going to be talking a lot of great news within the world of the NBA as well as college basketball. We have another action-packed show for you today, this Wednesday. I hope you are having a good day and a good morning so far, and I hope you enjoy the show. So let's get right into the show. We're going to be talking first of all about college basketball, leading off with college basketball in the show today, because last night we had basically upset night in college basketball. In college football, you see basically once a year, there's always upset week. All these top teams lose. When you're looking at college football last year, you had 1 week where number 2, number 3, and number 4 all lost within the same day. Last night was that night in college basketball. So number 1, Villanova, number 2, Kansas, and number 4, Kentucky all lose last night. They all lose on the road. Marquette upsets Villanova 74-72. Number 18, West Virginia pounds number 2, Kansas 85-69. And unranked Tennessee beats number 4, Kentucky 82-80. So, last night we had upset night. Marquette overcome a 19-point deficit to top Villanova. They outscored them by 17 in the second half. Villanova really cruising along. Everything was going great for them. They were up by 15 at halftime. But then Villanova with a huge second half and a nice run, a late run, a 19-4 run to top the new number 1 seed Villanova to give them their second loss of the season within the Big East. Caitlin Reinhart, he was the top performer for Marquette, 19 points, 4 assists, and 2 rebounds. Jalen Bronson led the way for Villanova, 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. Number 18, West Virginia, a while back they had beat then number 1 Baylor by 15 points. This time they beat number 2 Kansas by 16 points. So West Virginia, a really, really good team. They're ranked number 18, but a couple of big wins, number 1 at the time and now number 2 at the time over Kansas. So Asa Ahmad was the top scorer for West Virginia. He had 27 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. And then Josh Jackson led the way for the Jayhawks, 22 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists in the loss. West Virginia, big win. Bob Huggins, a really, really good coach, and he tops the Jayhawks last night. And then Tennessee at home, they defeated Kentucky, as I mentioned, 82-80. Robert Hubbs had 25 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists for the Volunteers. And Idris Adebayo led the way for Kentucky. He had 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Some other scores within college basketball. Number 12, Virginia beat number 14, Notre Dame, 71-54. Louisville absolutely pound Pittsburgh 106-51. Wisconsin improved to 6-1 in the Big Ten with the 82-55 victory over Penn State. Purdue topped really struggling Michigan State. Michigan State now 12-9, 4-4 within the Big Ten. Tom Izzo's not really happy. It looks as though Michigan State's probably not even going to make the tournament this year, which for Michigan State they've really been a staple in the NCAA tournament and really a staple making deep runs with the exception of last year where they were bounced in the first round. Miles Bridges had a good day for the Spartans, though, 33.7 rebounds. Number 22, Maryland, they improved to 6-1 in the Big Ten with a 67-55 victory over Rutgers. And number 23, South Carolina, a really big victory over Auburn, 98-69. So sticking with college basketball, going to talk some news really quickly about college basketball. And that's something that the NCAA announced yesterday. So the NCAA is going to have basically their first ever middle of the season in-depth look at the NCAA tournament bracket. Every year, especially come February, early part of March, we have this whole bracketology look of who's in, who's out, where teams are going to be ranked. Are they going to be a 1 seed, a 2 seed, a 3 seed? How a deep run in their conference tournament would really improve their seeding come tournament selection Sunday time. So to try and put a little bit of that to rest, the NCAA is going to be having their first ever in-season look at the NCAA tournament bracket. So on Saturday, February 11th, so a couple of weeks from now, they're going to have this basically a pre-selection show where they look at the top 16 teams currently as it stands. So basically, if the season were to end on February 11th, they would look at who would be the top 4 seeds in each bracket. So, is it a good idea? I think it's okay. So, Mark Hollins, who is the director of athletics at Michigan State, and he's the chair of this year's committee, he went on to say, "We are excited about giving the fans a glimpse of what the men's basketball committee is thinking at this point of the season and creating a buzz as we look towards Selection Sunday. It's important to recognize after this list has been released, there is still a significant portion of the regular season to be played, and every league must stage its conference tournament. There's potential for quite a bit of movement until we do it for real on March 12th, but this early peek will give everyone insight as to where the committee stands as we hit the stretch run of the regular season." So basically, they're going to tell you, if the season were to end today, who will be the top 4 teams in each bracket. It's a good idea. I mean, it gives you a little bit of insight, gives teams an idea of where they stand. Kind of reminds me of college football, how they have the playoff top 4 selection committee every single week, where they say, okay, this team with their win last week really moved up in the rankings, really helped themselves. So I guess it's a good idea in that regard. But for me, personally, I would love to see the other way around. You're looking at the top 16 seeds, okay? That means you're at least a 4 seed. If you're just a 4 seed, you're capable of making a deep run in the tournament and really even getting to the tournament final. 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, 4 seeds, even 5 seeds. Those are the top 20 to 25 teams in the nation. They're really, really good teams with really good regular seasons. So you already know that they're going to be good teams come playoff time. For me personally, I don't really care where the current top 4 in each bracket stand. For me, I'd love to see the reverse of that. I would love to see where the bottom teams stand. Where are the teams that are currently on the bubble stand? If the season were to end today, would you put in a team that's currently on the bubble or not? I don't know if this team is on the bubble. I don't think they are. I'm just going to throw out a random school. First one that comes to my head is Miami. I'm just going to throw out a random school. Say Miami. Say they're currently on the bubble by everyone's regards. Why don't we on February 11th reveal, look at some of the bubble teams, say, okay, currently they'd be on the last 4 in, or currently they'd be on the last 4 out. That way you give teams that are maybe thinking tournament an idea of where they stand and what they need to do with the last month of the season left to either put themselves in for sure, or if they struggle, know that they're going to be out. Because for me, that's definitely more stressful as a player and as a coach than knowing if I'm going to be a 3 seed or a 4 seed, or if I make a deep run in my conference tournament, if I could be a 2 seed as opposed to a 3 seed. For me, that's a lot more easy, a lot less stressful than having to worry if I'm a bubble team or not. I'd much rather find out if the bubble teams have a chance to get in or the bubble teams have a chance to get out. But nevertheless, this is a good idea. I think it's really good that you're giving these teams and these schools a little bit of a glimpse as far as where they stand, so they know what they need to really do or accomplish within the last month of the season to solidify their spot in the tournament, solidify their top ranking, because everyone wants to be as high as they can. Everyone wants to be the number 1 seed. Everyone wants to win their conference tournament. But, I mean, I guess it gives you a better idea as far as where you stand and where you are as a school, because then you have an easier route of things. You have an idea of what you need to do. Maybe if you're like currently number 1 seed, currently number 2 seed, maybe you can kind of rest some players down the stretch a little bit if you want to go that guard. If you have a player maybe coming back from injury, if you're like, oh, as it stands right now, we're number 3 seed, we've won 5 in a row, we'll be in a good spot come tournament time. I think maybe you can take a little more rest or something like that. So I think it's a good idea, but I would love to see where the bottom teams stand. I'd love to find out that as well. Perhaps that could be something that they address in the future. I'm sure they're not going to do this just one time and never do it again. So I'd imagine maybe they'll try to add to it, evolve, become more of a whole thing, and maybe show where some of the bubble teams stand and let them know what they need to do to get in or where they stand and if they even have a chance to get in. So with that, we'll take our first break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk about the NBA, some of the results from last night. Andrew Wiggins hits a buzzer beater, and the Philadelphia 76ers, are they actually relevant again? We'll discuss that and more right after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. We're going to transition over to talk about some of the games within the NBA last night. I honestly don't think it matters who the San Antonio Spurs have playing for them because they get production out of everyone, and yet they still win games. They improved to 36-9 last night over the Toronto Raptors, 108-106. LaMarcus Aldridge had 21 points, 7 rebounds, and a couple assists for the Spurs. Kyle Lowry had 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists for Toronto, who are kind of struggling right now. They're now 3 games back of struggling Cleveland. We'll talk about Cleveland a little later in the show. The Philadelphia 76ers, they overcome a 19-point deficit without arguably their best player, Joel Embiid, to top the Los Angeles Clippers 121-110. Nerlens Noel had 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists for the big man from Philly. And Jamal Crawford was the leading scorer for the Clippers. He had 27 points, 2 assists, and 1 rebound. Blake Griffin was back for this game for the Clippers, which is obviously a great sign. He had 12 points in his return after missing some time with a knee injury. But they're still without Chris Paul, and the Clippers are really, really struggling without him. They had a 19-point lead over the Sixers, and they still could not get it done. I want to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers for a little bit. The Sixers, you look at their record, you're thinking to yourself, well, they're not really a good team, and honestly, they're not. They're 16-27, but let me tell you about this Sixers team. They have won 7 of their last 10 games. They're 7-3 in their last 10. Absolutely good. That's a great. You keep that up, you'll be looking pretty good. Last year, this team won 10 games. They already have 16 in January. They already have over 1.5 times more wins than they had the entire last year. 2 years ago, they had 18 wins. 3 years ago, they had 19 wins. They're going to break those numbers by a lot. The Clippers, not the Clippers, but the Sixers, one of the more entertaining teams, honestly. Joel Embiid in his rookie year, he's finally healthy. Although he hasn't missed a little bit of time, he missed a game last night. He's playing fantastic. He's basically averaging 28 rebounds and 2.5 blocks a game in his rookie season. So he's only going to continue to improve. You have Jahlil Okafor, who had a good rookie year last year. He's injured right now. And you have Ben Simmons, who you drafted number 1 overall in the draft last year. He's injured, but he is scheduled to be returning pretty soon. So you could have a nice little core with the Sixers. If the Sixers are going to have one problem, I guess it could be a good problem, is they're probably going to have too many big men. They have Joel Embiid. They have Jahlil Okafor. They have Nerlens Noel. Ben Simmons is about 6'9", a small forward, power forward type, so you can kind of throw him in there with the big men role. So perhaps they could look to offload one of them. That was the report all along, is that they were going to offload one of these guys. It has not happened yet. But they could offload one of them to maybe get a guard. Because as far as the front court stands, when Simmons comes back, if he lives up to his potential as the number 1 overall pick, a good year in college at LSU, although I kind of question sort of his leadership, his mentality. As far as his play on the court, he's fabulous. He's a great player. I think he'll have no trouble transitioning into the NBA once he gets healthy, gets some time under his belt, and sort of evolves with this team, because it's a young team. I guess you can kind of say trust the process, because it's been working. You know, Ersan Ilyasova is not a bad big man off the bench. He's averaging about 15 points for them. So I guess they're okay. And for a team that won 10 games all of last year to already have 16, you got to say they're looking pretty good. I mean, you got to like what they're doing. And I guess you can say this mindset of just tanking for the last couple of years is kind of working. They're not a good team this year. They'll be in the lottery again, so they'll probably get another top 10 draft pick at least. Maybe they can win the lottery, get a lot higher. This is a good draft coming out in my eyes. I really like Lonzo Ball. Malik Monk from Kentucky's a good young player, among others. So I guess it could be okay for Philly, and they really are the surprise team in a good way in my eyes. They're 11-14 at home, so they're not really getting it done on the road, only 5 road wins. But still, I've been really, really impressed with what the Sixers have done this year. And really, the only addition is Joel Embiid. He's having a great rookie year, probably going to win the Rookie of the Year if he stays healthy. So I've been really impressed with the Sixers, and they've been the laughingstock of the NBA the last couple of years, let's be honest. But they're slowly turning it around, and they're one of the more entertaining teams now. And it's a good thing to see. So the Wizards picked up a 123-108 victory last night over the struggling Celtics. The Celtics have lost 3 games in a row now. We'll talk about Boston in the next segment. Marcus Smart, not the happiest guy after the game, and they're also getting a patch on their jersey, a sponsorship patch. So we'll talk about that in the next segment. The Bulls with a 192 victory over the Orlando Magic. Jimmy Butler had 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists for the Bulls. Nikola Vucevic was the leading scorer for Orlando. He had 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists. The Bulls now right midway in their season, 23-23. Dwayne Wade making some comments recently. We'll talk about in the third segment, but could maybe determine whether he stays in Chicago or not. He's on a 2-year deal, but not the happiest guy right now. And at 23-23, you'd imagine they should have been a lot better with Butler and Wade, but they're really not getting it done so far in the East. The Jazz lose their second straight game after Russell Westbrook just the absolute dagger on Monday, just stole it away there at the buzzer. So the Nuggets top the Jazz this time by 10, 103-93. Nikola Jokic led the way for Denver. He had 23 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. Derek Favors was the top performer for the Jazz. He had 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist. And last night, Andrew Wiggins on the road in Phoenix hits a buzzer beater for 2 of his 31 points and a 112-111 victory for the Minnesota Timberwolves over the Phoenix Suns. Like I said, he had 31 points, he had 6 rebounds and 3 assists as well. Tyson Chandler kind of turning back the clock a little bit. He had 22 points, 17 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Reminded me a lot of what he was doing in Dallas, just an absolute horse on the boards, bringing down boards, playing good defense, and really doing a lot of the cleanup work. A lot of putbacks, a lot of slam dunks, a lot of buckets close range to the basket. Tyson Chandler, a good young player that has really developed into his career now and really just been an NBA longtime veteran. I'm really, really excited to see what he can do now with the Suns, and hopefully he can keep it up. The team so far not really doing too great, 15-30, but hopefully Tyson Chandler can keep doing what he has been doing for such a long time for so many other teams in the NBA. So we'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to be talking about the Celtics, as I mentioned. They have a sponsorship deal with GE, and Marcus Smart not too happy after the game yesterday. Some of his comments after the game sort of made some headlines. And then we'll talk LeBron James, what the Cavaliers could do at backup point guard. He's been really, really upset. And then Dwayne Wade's future with the Chicago Bulls. Is it in jeopardy or is it not? We'll talk about that and more after the break at the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So the Boston Celtics now become the third team as it stands in the NBA, to get a sponsorship deal that will allow them to put a patch, a 2.5 by 2.5 inch patch on their jerseys for the next upcoming season. So this will happen next year. And that's with GE, General Electric. Their company did move from Connecticut to Boston, so it makes sense. It's kind of a local deal now. So as I mentioned, the Celtics are the third team. The Philadelphia 76ers have a deal with StubHub, and the Sacramento Kings have a deal with Blue Diamond. So that's like a little patch. It actually works really well because it's a circle. It's going on the top left part of the jersey, basically where the shoulder strap goes down. So this is really just a sign of everything to come, right? Pretty sure every single deal, every single team will have a deal get done with some sort of sponsorship to get put on the jersey. They do this in the WNBA, although that's on really the front of the jersey. This would not happen. It'd just be like a small patch really in the corner. In soccer, they have a sponsorship on every single jersey. A lot of which, because in soccer there's really no commercials, there's no breaks, there's no timeouts. The only commercial breaks is halftime and after the game. So you have to sort of find a way to advertise somehow. With the NBA, now they're kind of transitioning into the sponsorship role in the jerseys. This is only a matter of time before every single deal has it. Every single team has a deal. And to me, it's not that big of a deal. Everyone's kind of like, oh, it takes away from the jerseys and everything, and it's not a big deal. It's a 2.5 by 2.5 inch patch. I mean, you may not even be able to see it, especially if you're just watching in the stands. You're not even going to be able to tell that there's something on there. It's not a big deal. The Celtics now the third team with GE. I think really every team in the next couple of years is going to have a sponsorship on their jerseys. The NFL is experimenting with this. They have them on their practice squad jerseys for most of the teams. So it's gonna happen, and it's not a big deal. Advertising, sponsorships, money, it drives all of the nation. It drives the world. It's the money maker. This is sports. NBA is now a global game. You're trying to take your brand global. It makes sense. It works. I get it. You know what I mean? I don't have an issue with it. So sticking with the Celtics, as I mentioned last night, they lost to the Wizards. The Wizards actually doing something, wearing all black, kind of like the Celtics funeral, kind of like a little rivalry going on there. They lost by 15, 123 to 108. But Marcus Smart, not really one of the happiest players about the game, really, really frustrated. So he was sat out for a little bit of time in the second half, about the last 8 minutes. Smart about missing the game, about missing the last 8 minutes, wasn't really happy. He said, I was really passionate. I kind of got frustrated. I wanted to go back in the game, wanted to help my team, and that didn't happen. So he and the coaches, a little bit of a difference of opinions there. But he's kind of playing this down as not a big deal. He's saying, I got to let my emotions get the best of me. I apologize to my teammates and to my coaches for some of my remarks that I said. I just hate to lose. And I get that, man. You got that competitor's edge. You got that competitor's role. You're an NBA player. You're a competitor. He's trying to be a winner. The Celtics doing okay right now in the East, but probably would have thought they'd been a lot better with the addition of Al Horford. So I get that. There's nothing wrong with that, man. It's okay. Just take it easy. You'll be all right. And go get him next time. So Chicago Bulls, 23-23, as I mentioned in the previous segment. Dwayne Wade admits that he is kind of concerned that there won't be much growth in the final 3 months of the season. So he said after a shoot-around, he said, I'm 35. I'm concerned, of course. I don't know if it's that simple, but it's not just black and white. If you see certain teams going through a year, they can get better, and then you see certain teams not getting better. I'm not really sure if we're getting better or not. I've been on both. He said, I've been on good teams, I've been on bad teams. So he's, like I said, he's 35. He said, right now we are who we are, and they're a 500 team. So there's a little bit of doubt about Dwayne Wade in Chicago now. I mean, really, this is just, the Bulls are like a mess. You had the whole Derrick Rose incident situation. You finally traded him away to New York. One of the best things you could have done. You have a young star in Jimmy Butler to build around. You bring in Dwayne Wade, the hometown boy who's a legend near the tail end of his career at 35 years old. And then you bring in Rajon Rondo. Great player, but not necessarily the best teammate, and really butts heads with a lot of the coaches and players. The Bulls are just a mess. Seriously. They should be a lot better than their 23-23 record, but you are what your record says you are. And right now, the Bulls are just simply not a good team. Dwayne Wade, although he is a legend, He's not the same player he was 10 years ago. His knees are not the same. He's older. You can't really trust that he's going to stay healthy the whole time. And you kind of have to question now if this was the best decision to bring him in. Good for the fans. Of course, they want to see a legend like him. It's his hometown, so it makes sense. But you kind of have to admit, maybe you gave him a little too much money, and it wasn't necessarily best for the team. So, that takes me to Cleveland now. LeBron James, not very happy. We all know that. LeBron James, after Monday's loss to the Pelicans, saying we need a bleeping playmaker. We're top-heavy. We don't have any depth to this team. LeBron James is playing the most minutes of anyone in the league at 32 years old and the 14-year veteran. Really, you could say 15, 16 years because of all the playoff games he's played, all the Olympics games. That basically would equate to another season or two. So LeBron James might be 32, but his body's a lot older than 32 years old. So they're kind of dwindling. The Cavs have lost 6 of their last 11 games, or 5 and 6 in 2017. LeBron is not very happy, and of course LeBron kind of drives the team. In my eyes, he got David Blatt fired last year, but they're 30 and 13. They need a backup point guard. They literally do not have a backup point guard. LeBron James is playing the most minutes in the league, as I mentioned. Reports are that the Cavaliers are interested in a couple of guys. One of them being Rajon Rondo, Jameer Nelson. You have Darren Williams in Dallas. Maybe a guy like DJ Augustine, possibly. But they need someone to be a distributor and a backup point guard. And I agree. LeBron did say that, and I agree with him. They need someone to be a distributor and to be a point guard. To be a backup point guard. Because Kyrie Irving, although he is technically their point guard, he's 6'3", and he's a scorer. He's not out there to pass the ball. He's there to score. So they need someone. They need to bring in someone. A matter of who is the question. For me, Rondo's not the guy. Great player, but kind of just a distraction. Doesn't really get along with people well. Maybe LeBron can tame him in if that was the case, but I'm not really sure it's going to happen. Jameer Nelson is really old. I wouldn't go there. Maybe Darren Williams, if the asking price is right. He could be a solid backup for you. He'd be more of a distributor role as opposed to what they have right now with Kyrie Irving. So, I mean, it would be okay, but the Cavaliers are still 30 and 13. It's almost like they're hitting the panic button a little too fast in my eyes. If there's ever a way to get back, it's who they play tonight. They're playing the Sacramento Kings. We all know the Kings are not a good team. They're 17 and 27. So possibly Cleveland could kind of turn it around and maybe cool some of these LeBron basically runs the team whole efforts. Because right now they're still a good team. They're still going to be the top team in the East. And in my eyes, their season will really start come playoff time. And really, in particular, Eastern Conference Finals. They shouldn't struggle with who they get in the first round. The second round, they'll probably play Boston, maybe Toronto in the finals. And then that's when their season really starts. And then they have to look forward to Golden State, possibly San Antonio or Houston. And that's where we'll see what LeBron's made of. But for me, he's playing more minutes than anyone in the league right now. It's not a good idea because he's going to be a little tired come playoff time. Even LeBron needs some rest. So they got to find a way to get a backup to give him a little bit more rest and find a way to win games. But don't hit the panic button too early, Cleveland. You guys are still okay. You're in a good situation. You'll still be fine. Games within the NBA tonight, as I mentioned, the Kings will be taking on the Cleveland Cavs. The Houston Rockets will take on the Boston Celtics. That'll be a good game. Boston now lost 3 in a row. The Miami Heat will take on the Brooklyn Nets, the struggling Brooklyn Nets at 9 and 35, the worst record in the league. The Atlanta Hawks will take on the 500 Chicago Bulls. Probably another good matchup, a good young matchup if Joel Embiid does play, will be the Sixers taking on Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Toronto Raptors will take on the Memphis Grizzlies. Russell Westbrook looking for another triple-double against the Pelicans tonight. The Golden State Warriors will take on the Charlotte Hornets. Kemba Walker averaging a career high in points this year. The New York Knicks will take on the Dallas Mavericks, and then at 7:30 Pacific Time, 10:30 Eastern, the struggling Los Angeles Lakers, coming off of their franchise worst loss on Sunday, will take on the Portland Trailblazers, who are struggling as well. That's going to conclude the show for today, guys. My name is Ben Brown. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd like to thank you for stopping by the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. Pauline will be in the studio tomorrow to talk all things basketball right here at the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. Thank you for listening and have a good day, guys.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.